This video is to go over sourcing, which means how do you find sources, and then what do you do with them once you find them. Just as a reminder, please make sure you use your resources and that you are reading all directions. If you're watching this video, that's a great step. So first off, you're going to be able to look at many sources. You have to determine if a source is credible. For books and articles, in order to make sure a source is credible or trustworthy, that it's worthy of looking at for an HI and using there, is if it's peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that it's being reviewed by other historians, other experts, other scholars. Most of the time, these are going to be professors at colleges and universities, and they're publishing on behalf of the college or university, and they don't want bad information getting out there that's going to potentially discredit the university. So therefore they have people peer review it, therefore to verify, yes, this is true. So that way it is the best source possible. So you want to make sure it says peer reviewed, and you can even check that on the EBSCO search. When it's a book not published by a university, it's not going to necessarily have that peer-reviewed mark, but you could look for things by the government leaders who were present there at the time, journalists, media personalities, and general interest authors. And this is where we might have to do some additional research into the author. Like you look at the author and, oh, I don't know if they're the most credible. Do some research on them. It's online. You can find out, do they have a degree in history? What is their historical background? Have their books been approved? Have they been awarded? And so that's part of this process, is going through and determining what's credible. Eventually, we're going to be needing primary sources, so you need to be able to have a good primary source. That means two things. Number one, there's an author that's clearly identifiable. There will be a rare circumstance every now and then where you're not going to know directly who the author is, but you need to know generally who it is. And then it needs to be of critical importance to the topic of an event. It needs to be something that has that direct connection to what you're trying to talk about or prove. And then we will also be needing primary sources. I would suggest at least two. To qualify as a credible primary source, you need two things. One, to be able to identify who the author is. Now, there is a rare circumstance where you're not going to be able to find the exact name of the author, but you need to be able to generally determine who is writing this, because you have to make sure it's actually a primary source and from the time period. And then it needs to be of critical importance to the event. So it needs to have that direct connection to what you are trying to prove. You can't have a primary source and then have to take a hop, skip, and a jump to connect to what you're doing. The following are sources that are not scholarly and you cannot use. These are things that we would have wanted to be a part of our Google pre-search to build our knowledge and build our keyword list, but things that cannot be referenced on our HI. News media articles, encyclopedias, interest group websites, sources written for a young adult audience, Wikipedia, unpublished works, and student thesis papers and dissertations. So these things can be used to help build your content, and you can read through and be like, oh, I see what they're trying to say here. Let's see if there's academic articles about this thing that they're saying. So you can use it as a springboard, but you cannot use it as the actual evidence within your HI. So now how can you effectively and efficiently read scholarly sources? Because yes, you have to read the sources. Some major questions you're going to need to ask yourself while you're reading over the source. How does the author know that? So now that you've determined sources are credible, you need to read through, actually read the sources to decide how is this going to be helpful, if it is going to be helpful. We don't have time sometimes, though, to read a 30 to 40 page article or to read a whole book. So how can we effectively and efficiently do this? We want to be centered around some major questions. Some of the major questions include, how does the author know that? So you're thinking the methodology behind the author. Methodology, or what methods did they take to find this? Were they looking at statistics? Were they looking at evidence? Were they looking at other scholarly articles? What was their methodology? What evidence supports that statement? And so that's connecting to the methodology. Is that evidence they're looking at credible? you want to make sure they also have a works cited page. Are they referencing where they're getting their information? Why does that evidence support that statement? Are those directions and analyses thoroughly explained? Are there other ways to interpret that evidence? Would a different historian perchance take it a different route? And what sources does this author rely on? What types of sources? Are they credible? And so this is where they need to be referencing, need to have a works cited. Now, specifically for books, you're not going to have time necessarily to read the whole book. You might take it in increments, but what you need to do is for sure look at the table of contents, because a book is going to be much heftier and more detailed than what your HI will be. That's going to be more of the general topic, whereas you have narrowed yours down. And so read the table of contents, see if they have that narrow topic or something relevant to your narrow topic. Read the preface and or introduction. That's going to tell you their major viewpoints, their overall points of where they're going to take this. See if it connects to what's going to help explore those different analyses and perspectives. Read the last chapter. What conclusions do they draw? So if you notice, the preface and introduction and last chapter is basically what you have to do for your HI. If you think back to what I was saying about what is your overall goal of the HI, your overall goal is to explain the different perspectives and then draw a conclusion. And so that's how you want to then analyze and read sources. Also, look at the relevant parts to your HI. Like I said, a book will have much more information, and so you only want to look, not only, but you want to focus on the narrowed parts. Use the index and headings and subheadings to guide you to those relevant parts to your HI. Now, when it comes to articles, read the abstract. The abstract is an overview of what they're doing, the methodology, to give you an idea if this is useful or not before reading the full thing. Just to let you know, this is not an actual part of the article, therefore it cannot be cited. It's just there to help you determine if this source is going to be helpful to you or not. Read the introductory section. Just like the books, it's going to give you an overview of what their intent is, major themes, and their methodology. Their concluding section, and then look at their headings and subheadings to help you understand what they are trying to get across. Those headings and subheadings will help convey a lot. They've very intentionally chosen them for a purpose, so utilize those to your advantage.